Hey guys, how y'all doing? So today we're here to have a look at a game called Sacrifice, an Incense and Iron RPG. It's by Blackoath Entertainment, written by Alex T. Alex himself is an absolute madman. He has written many RPGs, he's collaborated with other companies. I do not know how he does it. You've probably heard of some of his games. One of the ones that blew up on Drive to RPG last year was called Across the Thousand Dead Worlds. He has many games. I suggest you check him out. As always, I will leave a description to where to find these books on Drive to RPG and as well on Alex's own site. Let's get into the book. The book itself is an OSR type system. So if you wanted to run adventures from any OSR game, Basic Expert, BECME, or AD&D, you can do that pretty effectively through this without any real issues. The system itself has its own major differences that you get from like a retro clone. It is not a retro clone by any aspect, but it is inspired by games like AD&D. So let's go through this. What is Incense and Iron? I've had the idea of creating a game with a strong Catholic Church-like presence for a long time. To tell the sort of stories you would find in Spain in the 15th century, countries riled up by religious fever, with an all-powerful Inquisition committing unspeakable acts of violence in the name of their god. You know, fun stuff. Although I consider myself a spiritual person, I always found the lengths that some people would go to defend their religion and spirituality quite frightening. Having grown up in a milieu with my grandmother being a hardcore Opus Dei supporter, and going to Catholic school certainly didn't help me see the best of Christianity or religion in general. The idea of playing in a dark fantasy medieval world with a strong religious presence has always sounded really cool to me. The church is a monolithic, powerful, and clearly evil institution. It creates a very unique background for any setting. It opens a lot of interesting possibilities fighting against such powerful institutions, but always make sure you don't do it openly, because otherwise you'd be labeled a heretic. It's a very fun thing to do, kind of what it is to play a rebellion in Star Wars. This is not an original idea at all, although the same could be said with sword and sorcery. Didn't appear until the 1960s, despite having been established as a genre for quite some time before that. I think that already there are plenty of stories out there that would fit the Incense and Iron setting. These come to mind: Berserk, and when you look through this game you will find that it's definitely inspired by Berserk, and Alex T openly says it here and he's said it many times before. You'll come across mercenary groups. One of them, I believe, top of my head, I'm trying to remember, I think it's called the Flaming Phoenix, and that's clearly a big hint towards Berserk, and the way you'll come across a thing called branding and demonic forces and stuff like that. It's really cool. But anyway, RPGs such as Warhammer Fantasy, Ruination Pilgrimage, books such as the Safehold series by David Weber, video games such as Blasphemous, and in some ways Dark Souls, films like The Black Death, Solomon Kane, The Pit and Pendulum. Now that we've discussed where the idea of this quote-unquote new genre comes from, and what its main influences are, and the core aspects of Incense and Iron as I understand it. And he basically goes on to talk about how it's a low fantasy setting, there's not going to be really any magic, the world is very dark, think grimdark medieval sword and sorcery. Feudalistic society, churches rule over everything for the most part, in one way or another. And there's always a presence of demonic beings in the background. What is Sacrifice? Sacrifice is a role-playing game that uses D20 to resolve all its actions. This means that it's compatible with most D20 RPGs and related material old and new. So that's the beginning I was talking about. It could be used with Basic Expert, BECME, AD&D and other stuff like that. In Sacrifice you play as a branded character, like we said earlier. So you're going to have it's like a symbol that's been burned onto your skin. It means you were marked for sacrifice. And we go to the character creation and it will say why and how this was a thing. But basically when you start to come across demonic forces, you will initially take 1 point of damage and you'll gain an idea of which direction it's in, so you can go down and hunt it down. As a branded, you are no ordinary mortal. You've escaped certain death. While the forces of evil are powerful, as is the Holy Church and its Inquisition, so is your will to live, your determination and resilience in the face of certain death. Set you apart from common man, nothing else. What some deem supernatural abilities, you know just well, it's a combination of experience, determination, and perhaps pure luck. How does it play? It's best with a game master and a single player. You can play this solo with no problem. You can also play this as a group with no problem. If you're playing as a 1 GM and 1 character or solo, you're going to probably want to play, I suggest here, a branded character. What this really means is you're going to start at level 3. So you have a power boost. If you're going to be playing as like more common man or other classes, which there are other classes in this, one of them is a knight. There is smaller zines which he's created, which add other new classes and abilities and backgrounds. You can also start as a level 1. So if you want to have a group and play like a more normal like OSR type game, you can do that, no problem. You have as many people as you want. You can have 2 or 5 people. Task resolution is going to be pretty simple, very easy to 5. It's going to be nearly impossible to not get that. Easy is 10, moderate is 15, hard is 20, very hard 25, and nearly impossible is 30. That's going to be you needing to roll a d20 to resolve any issues. Advantages and disadvantages is very good in this. So you roll 2 dice if you have advantage or disadvantage. If you have advantage, you'll take the highest of the 2. If you have disadvantage, you take the lowest of the 2. So say if you rolled for advantage, you had a 20 on one dice and a 5 in the other, you would take the 20. If you had the same roll with disadvantage, you'd take the 5 instead of the 20. Roll a natural 20 is a crit success, and you will have a chart you can roll on depending on the type of your weapon you're using. If you had a sword or a blunt object, you're going to get different kind of results. Opposed checks, again, you just roll off against each other. If you need to use a skill, you add that skill to your check on whatever you're doing. Very simple, very straightforward, and it can be as simple or complex as you want. There are some optional stuff in here which can make it a little more crunchy if that's what you want, but this is a relatively real-like game. How to create your character: begin by taking your character sheet. I'll show you the character sheet now. It's actually on the back, and that's it. That's your character sheet. Very simple, as you can download and reproduce it in any ways you want, or just use pieces of paper. You roll 3d6 6 times, once for character ability. 3 are your strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. All your characters are going to be human. You don't need to pick a race. There are no character classes. But they kind of are, but some of those are added in later on, and this is like a compiled version of the game. But anyway, as a branded, you start at level 3 like we said. You don't have to do that. You can do level 1, or you can do it as one of the other classes, which I think most of them or all of them start at level 2. But we'll just say we'll go along with this for now. If it's branded, you start at level 3. As a new character, you start off with 30 pieces of silver to spend on any gear found in the equipment section in this chapter. And as you hear, your modifiers are going to be the same in most classic D&D games or OSR games. The lowest score of 3, the -3 modifier. The high score of 18 with a +3 modifier. So as a branded, you're going to have an extra trait, and you can either roll a d4 or pick one. And they are Titanic Strength, you get a +2 to Strength. Lightning Reflexes, you get a +2 to Dex. Unbreakable Will, you get a +2 to Wisdom. Boundless Vitality, +2 to Constitution. And here we go, we talk about the branded. You bear the scar of a marked sacrifice. A terrible scar has both wounded your flesh and soul. At first sight, it looks like a regular firebrand, but never truly heals. When in the proximity of demonic forces within a radius of 30 feet, the marked sacrifice burns as if it knows it was carved onto your skin, causing 1 point in damage. After focusing for a second, you know the direction and distance towards where the demon or demons came from. And not done yet. When your character reaches 0 hit points, you can perform a con save. You need to roll a 12 or more to avoid becoming unconscious. If you pass it, you can sacrifice 1 con to gain 1d4 and miraculously stand up. It can only be done once per combat. Luck. The character's luck is equal to half their level rounded up. So if you're level 1, you only have 1. If you're level 3, you're going to have 2. So it'll be used to get away from combat. Use it to pass checks if you wish. That's going to be up to the GM if you're playing with a GM. This means that incapacitated allies can be dragged away by surviving wings. Luck is recovered at a rate of 1 luck per resting day. So it's going to be a whole day of you doing nothing. A mastery die. Each time your character is involved in a combat with opponents with a number of hit dice lower than your level, you can use the mastery die. In your turn, you automatically deal 1d4 damage to any opponent within range. This represents passing blows and lesser strikes that the character deals to those around them without much of a thought due to their combat mastery. So again, this is bringing more of that berserk sort of feel to it. How Hawks is going around with his big sword, he's surrounded by guys, and he's just slashing at 1 or 2 of them, and all of a sudden 4 of them explode into pieces. And the character advancement is very simple, has from level 1 to 12, how much you get in experience points to level up. what you get when you level up. Very simple, very straightforward, easy to do. The skills are very simple. If you played any game that has skills in it, you'll know how to use them, what they are for. These things can be added onto your checks where you're doing things. So athletics, if you're trying to swim or run a long distance, you would then add your athletic skill to your check that you're doing. And the same goes for everything here. You have medicine, you have culture, is going to be a knowledge check. Deception is going to be charisma check. Nature, understanding what's around you, plants, monsters, and so on. You have history, sleight of hand, that's going to be for pickpocketing. Then you're going to have your proficiencies. Again, this is going to be more things that you can use that are going to affect your character in positive ways. Example, armor focus. While wearing one type of you choose one type of armor, and we're wearing that, you're going to have your defense increased by 1. Backstab, double your attack damage when attacking an unsuspecting target. Yeah, most of this is common sense. It pretty much implies what you think it's going to apply. And there's a good few of these here. If you want to look at them, you can pause and go through them. Combat maneuvers are going to be more abilities. So you will gain combat maneuvers as you level up. Here's an example here. So to be able to use combat maneuvers, a character must spend stamina at the beginning of each combat. A character must roll 1d8 plus their level to determine the amount of stamina they have available in that combat. And then it gives a cost for each combat maneuver that can be done. So battle cry costs 2. So if you only had 6, you'll be down to 4 left after this. You can use 1 per turn, per round I mean. You inspire allies in battle with a fierce cry, granting them and yourself +1 to attack rolls. So again, this is going to be more stuff to make your character different than the other ones. So if you had more than one player with you, and you both decided to be branded, you're going to be able to help each other out. You can also have NPC allies, but just have them as level 1 characters. Or if you start off as level 1 characters, it's going to be helpful. Stuff like that. Again, it's going to be pretty simple, pretty straightforward, easy to understand for everyone. And this is a really cool part of the game. I really like it. So when you're using a weapon, and if you are fighting demonic forces and monsters in the game, demonic monsters, they can't just be like a monstrous like wolf or anything like that, or people. It has to be demonic. You will gain fragments, or what they call fragments, and once your weapon has absorbed enough fragments, they're going to gain levels, and these levels are going to have abilities attached to them. The first level is going to have a +2 to attack rolls and damage, and as you go up, you're going to gain level traits. Again, more attack rolls and damage. And here are the traits. So we look at a few of them here. So the first one here is command. Once a day, a human target within your hearing range must obey a single command you give them if they fail a charisma saving throw. Inner strength, once per day, you can try upon your weapon's strength and heal yourself 1d8 hit points. That's very powerful. So obviously you roll a 1d20, and that's the one you're going to get. Unless the DM decides, if you're playing with DM, you are going to get this one at this level for this weapon. So a brutal past. This is going to be more or less the final part for your branded character. There's going to be D8 D6 checks mostly. So let's say we go with the first one. You were recruited to the Inquisition as an orphan. What became your greatest achievement as an Inquisitioner? Let's say we go with number 4. You brought reason to a witch hunt and avoided the death of an innocent. Someone betrayed you. Who was it? Maybe it was your superior. And why is the Inquisition hunting you? You left a trail destruction behind you. So maybe your character was an orphan. What they considered the greatest achievement, they stopped a witch hunt, and then maybe that witch hunt ended up being in something that needed to be done, and since you stopped that, a trail of destruction was left behind you, and then a superior turned you in, and you're going to have a character flaw, which is going to help towards your roleplay. And here's the branded symbol, and 1d10 where it's going to be placed. And depending where it's placed on this chart, it's going to be very obvious or very hidden, which is another thing which is going to make each character a little bit different. So maybe you have it on your neck, but your buddy has it on their butt cheeks. It's going to be easier for one of you to hide it. And another cool thing about this is, so if you go to certain places like certain tombs, battlefields, you're gonna have to do a wisdom ability check. And if you fail this, it means like the dead are coming out, like their spirits are coming out, and they end up taking over your body. Your body being after being possessed. It's gonna be possessed for a number of hours. It's gonna be equal to 10 minus your wisdom. So if you have a +2 to your wisdom modifier, it's going to be for 8 hours, and then it's going to be 1d6 to determine what happened. You spent all your money on food and drink if you got roll 2. That's a good one. Like, you're broke, but you know, you didn't go on a killing spree like number 1, so that's good. You better off lose all your money instead of having an entire town looking for you and the rumors of who you are spreading. Wound and scars. This can be done depending on what part of the game you're in. So say if you're after having gone on a killing rampage, maybe your character got hurt as well. You lose the D10 hit points from self-mutilation. And here's the area it happens in, 1d10. Maybe you got on your chest or your arm, and all of a sudden you now have a paralyzed arm. Maybe your arm's deformed from your mutilation. Or maybe it's been cut off because when you went on a rampage, a guard stopped you. There'll be more you can read there if you wish. Some character names you can use for yourself or others. They're going to be related to the different groups and areas of people. And it's going to start about other occupations. So this can be used for NPCs, NPC allies. If you decide to have a group of 3, 4, 5 people, you can all be commoners. And it's just going to be how you make them. You don't have to always do things. What made you leave your old life behind you? The Lord released you from his service. You were a beekeeper or a blacksmith. Use your family backgrounds, starting trinkets, demeanor. Knight errant. You start off at level 2 of Knight errant. I think there's a Tomb Raider, and I think there might be one more class in this. So if you want, you can pause, have a look through this. And they're going to be different enough. Yeah, Tomb Robber. That's Tomb Raider. Again, you can pause here. So you have your gear here. Here it talks your coinage, how things are. Most of your coins are probably going to be in silver. Gold is going to be pretty rare in this game. Encumbrance, you can carry how many items you can carry. Your strength, a modifier +10 without any penalties. The size of the item you're carrying is going to determine also how many slots it takes up. So like a light item can be pulled up in the items of 10 into one slot, so that could be a bunch of arrows. So a heavy item, that could be a big chest and you're carrying around. Or it could be like a pole arm, a big weapon. Here's the weapon charts. Quarterstaff, spears, bastard swords, battle axe, club, dagger, whips, hammers. There's a lot here. It has some weapon properties. So a finesse weapon, you can use your dex instead of your strength. So that would be something like a whip. Finesse. Slow weapons are going to be used once each 2 rounds. Two-handed weapons must be wielded by both hands. Versatile weapons can be used by either hand. You have your thrown weapons or range weapons. So like here's their arrows, they're light, so you can carry up to 10 in one slot. No worries. You have your helmets, you have other types of armor, you have your shields. So a versatile weapon, you want to have that plus a shield. Different kinds of gear you can get. Backpacks, you can add more to how much you're able to carry. Rations, oil, rope, spy glasses, you can see how further out. Thieves' tools, torches, water skins, and how to play. Again, it's going to be very simple. You're going to have checks on abilities that you'll be doing. So you're going to use your attributes for the most part. Plus, if you're doing like a skill type check, you'll add or use that skill modifier and the difficulty determined by the GM. Or if you're solo, you're going to have to be objective about this. Attack rolls are going to be the same thing. You're going to try. You need to defeat the character's defense level, which is basically going to be their AC in this. Combat and rounds. To understand combat, you must understand the difference between a turn and a round. A turn is a single combatant's chance to act, while a round is the sum of all combatants taking their actions. Very simple. Combat step by step. Determining surprise. The GM determines where anyone survived in the combat. They need to roll off a dice or just say you're surprised or not surprised. You know, if you're doing solo, just roll a d6, use the OSE type system. On a 1 or 2, you're surprised. And if you're both surprised, then it sort of like nulls each other out. Establish positions. Again, you can use miniatures or theater of the mind, whatever way you want to do it. Roll initiative, and you take turns based on your initiative order. The next round begins when every combatant has taken an action. That includes NPCs. A surprise has in here how you can do a surprise. If you don't want to do like what I said, I'd probably just use the D6 system. It's just quicker. But if you don't want it, everyone rolls a. You compare your stealth check to your passive perception. Passive perception is 10 plus wisdom modifier. Initiative is going to be your dex modifier. Again, it's very simple. It's very easy. And it talks about standard attacks. A standard attack is performed with a melee ranged weapon at level 7. PC is capable of performing an extra. So that's cool. You can also use a combat maneuver, which is like, again, we talked about earlier, it's going to be like an ability. When you use the ability, it takes up the whole turn, unless stated otherwise, and you cannot use one until the following round. And that's going to be your stamina as well, so keep that in mind. Using your feet, defending yourself, you can focus on defending maneuvers, such as parrying or dodging. It grants you a +2 to DL until your DL is your defense level, until the start of your next turn. Think of DL as AC. Disengaging, you can also use luck check to disengage if you wish, so then you don't have to roll anything. You just say, I disengage, I use my luck roll. Critical hits and fumbles. When a character rolls a natural 20 when rolling for attack, they perform a critical hit. The attack's damage is double, so just roll 2 of the dice. So if you have if you roll d6 normally, roll 2d6. When a character rolls a natural 1 when attacking, this is considered a critical failure or fumble. Roll on the fumble table to determine what happens. So here's the critical hit for bludgeoning. Remember I said earlier, different weapons will have different type of critical hits. So on a 1, you crack their skull, the target is stunned and cannot attack for 3 rounds. So if that's like a normal character, they're probably going to be dead. If it's a boss type character or a demon, they'll probably be around, depending on how many characters there are. Critical hit with spell or bomb like abilities. Slashes, piercing, and your fumble chart. On a 1, you drop your weapon. On a 3, you hurl a weapon with such strength that it smashes against the stone and breaking it in half. If that was like a bow, I'd say your bowstring snapped. Yeah. Hit location, they're optional rules. We said there will be some optional rules in this if you want to make the game a little more crunchier. If that's what you want, there you go. I don't use these. I haven't used these. I was playing this as a more rules light, simple way of going through things. It's fun. If you want more complexity to it, you can do it. There's no problem. And it's going to have consequences. It's going to have how to do call shots. Again, this is going to be related to the optional rule of hit locations. If you want to pause, you can read that yourself there. Dueling moves. So characters participating in a duel can choose one of the following moves during their turn. Alternatively, a GM can decide to roll randomly to determine what an NPC next move will be. So you can both roll, or you can just pick one. I'd say rolling is going to be a bit more fun. It's going to be more random. 1 to 3, you then do a defensive move. A D4 defensive move is going to be block, disarm, shield break, standard defense. I was going to have the same for offensive. We want for disarm, for example. So disarm. The character attempts to disarm their opponent. Both characters perform a standard attack roll, and if the character attempting to disarm obtains the highest result, their opponent's weapon falls D10 feet away. So again, there's lots of different options for play, how you want to do things. You decide your characters want to go into a town. There's someone causing trouble there. They're part of it, like maybe a small gang. Their leaders, trying to rob all the food, attack the women. You challenge him to a duel. If he accepts, you can then have one of these. And there's a thing in the game as well for morale. So say if you win that duel, the goons I'm going to call them goons. So the other enemy NPCs, they will have to do a morale check. Anytime a leader dies, 25% of the characters from that group dies, or 50% of the characters within that group die. And with monsters, I believe it's either 50 or 75% of the monsters' own hit points are depleted. They will then attempt to run away. And there's going to be more here. Combat maneuvers, enemy morale. Yep, we just talked about it here. So yeah, you can see it there. For animals, it's after losing 75%, and after 50% of the combats have been eliminated. More here for that. The healing and death. I like the way the healing is done in this. So the higher your amount of health is, the more you're going to heal. So like in AD&D, you're basically healing at, I think it was at 1 hit point per day. So if you have a character at 30 hit points and they got down to like 5 hit points, they're out for 25 days. I think it was 1 hit point a day. Might be up to 3. But it's a while. But this, you're rolling. And the higher your character's hit points, the more they're able to roll. So you're not going to be... So proportionally, it's going to be fairly similar. And you have your injury charts. So permanent wounds. This also relates back to what we talked about earlier. About injuries and wounds. And like there we go, it talks about going back to the page 28, 29. So a pierced lung is going to be a -1 permanent con. Tendon damage, again, gives you -1 strength. On a 10, you lose you lose D4 fingers. So imagine you lost your 4 fingers. That hand's useless to you now. Then your saving throws, your different kinds of saving throws, what you're going to need to do. Most of these are going to probably be con. Also, you're going to have wisdom for charm. Blindness is going to be a con. Stun is going to be a con. Sleep is a con check. Paralyze is a con. Charm and fear are going to be wisdom checks. Fatigue represents exhaustion, exposure, hunger, injuries, and other physical factors which gradually wear a character down. If the character has gone too long without food or with sleep, food, climbing a frozen mountain without proper equipment, or tries to cross an endless desert without enough water, they're going to start occurring fatigue. The most common reasons for occurring fatigue are going to be going without food or water for 24 hours, i.e. not consuming a ration a day, or not getting any rest for longer than 24 hours. Environmental harshness, as mentioned above, can also be a deciding factor. Each level of fatigue adds to the effects of the preceding levels, piling up in a way that can become quite harmful very quickly. Each time a character suffers from fatigue, gets a proper meal or night's rest, their fatigue level is decreased by 1. And here they are. So level 1, your speed is halved. Level 2, disadvantage on strength, dexterity, and constitution checks. Level 3, disadvantage on attack rolls, constitution saves using strength, dexterity, or con. And it goes all the way down to level 6, and your character dies. You become dehydrated, you're starved to death, so on. And it talks about the hex grid and how you can keep track of things. If you don't want to use hex grid, you don't have to. This is just one that the Alex recommends. Excuse me. The terrain, the weather, and there you go. So this chart is great. I love it. It's pretty much taken from AD&D. So at the top here you see swamp, farmland, hill, mountain, ticketed, ruins, and forest. So say you're starting in a farmland area. Roll a d20. You land on. You say you roll a 13. You're now in swampland. But if I start off in swampland, I roll 13 is now farmland. Forest if we were in hill. If we're a mountain at the end becomes hill. If you're a trinket it now becomes farmland, and so on. It's a great system. So some possible actions you can do. So making camp. Player characters look for an appropriate place to make camp, including set up tents, searching for water, firewood, and so on. In order to do so, a character must make a survival check. If more than one character has a survival skill, they can help, and they gain some advantage. And these are some camping mishaps that can happen. On a D10, 1, you're too noisy in camp. You're too noisy while setting up camp and attracting some unwanted attention. Roll appropriate counter table, and there's counter tables down below. So say we roll a 4, the chosen site is not ideal. Too much wind, exposure to the elements, or some other similar problems means that the camp needs to be moved to a different location. Nobody managed to sleep during this night, and they each gain a fatigue level. Now, this doesn't have to be rolled on all the time because it will just non-stop issues. It's going to be up to the DM or yourself. So if you're exploring a hex, if you want to look for different areas or places that might be in it, you need to perform a skill check of investigation. You need of 14. If the DM decides it's going to be harder or easier, that's going to be up to them, but the set rate is 14. Foraging, hunting, fishing. Interaction with 30 stays of one location for at least one phase. This includes exploring ruins or visiting a town. So adventuring or going into town, maybe getting more supplies. Traveling, you're going to have orientation checks like you do with most things. Traveling mishaps. So number 5, as example, a random party member trips and sprains their ankle. The affected character must rest for the remainder of the day, and their speed is reduced to half for 1d4 days. It's a very simple system, but everything's covered, pretty much. Random events, abandoned camp, 1d6 chances of finding a random piece of gear, an empty animal lair, 1d10 corpses. Seems recent that you can play that as a roleplay experience. What happened? Was it by bandits? Maybe it was the Inquisition coming by, they're looking for you. Maybe it was a demon. All these things can be played into roleplay, obviously. Here are some of the encounter tables and charts. So again, this is an OSR soft system. It's going to be compatible with most, if not all, OSR type games, include classical D&D. That'd be AD&D, BECME, Basic Expert. So you can use your monster books that you have for any of these systems to add more creatures and monsters to the game. There's not a ton of them in this, but the ones I would absolutely keep and not switch out are the demons, because they're going to be a core part of this. And the demons are going to be a lot like in Berserk. So you have corruption in the world. The world is an ugly place, being strangled and suffocated by polluting influences of demonic beings, which manifests itself as corruption. Normal human evil gives birth to metaphysical evil and corruption. A lord enjoys handing out punishment too much, an inquisitor who revels in the screams of a heretic, a father abusing his children. These are all portals for demonic influences to seep into our world. Certain creatures and places and actions may cause a character to gain corruption. When they earn an amount of corruption above their threshold, they suffer the effects of the mark of corruption and must roll on the table below. So again, more awesome roleplay. This could also be applied to your player characters. Say if you're playing a group and one of them's being murder hobo, there's a great way to punish them. Earning experience points, it's going to go through that. It's pretty straightforward. Options for faster leveling. So playing without a game master. This is going to be your solo rules. So answering yes and no questions. Here you're going to do it. It has its own inbuilt system. So almost certainly it's like going to happen on a 3 or higher on a d20. Almost impossible it's going to be a 19 or higher. You can kind of determine what you want. If you want to say this is going to be a difficult challenge, maybe put it as a 15, so it's unlikely. And you try and roll on and see what happens. Or you can, if you have your own oracle system you like, you can use, you can do that. And you have complications, so there's an unexpected event at a very bad time or moment. Maybe you're in a battle with some bandits and then all of a sudden wolves surround all of you and start attacking everybody. This is an example top of my head. Actions and themes. D100. So these are going to be sort of like spark table sort of stuff. Teams, creature combat actions, what they're going to do. We could roll D10. And it's going to have a full health, 50% or less, 25% or less. So here are some more charts you can use. I haven't used these myself. They're there if you want to use them. I sometimes get a bit confused with all the stuff that's going on here, but that's just me. So this section is a land ravaged by war, and the next one is going to be more or less about the men and groups within the world. So the continent of Nina has been inhabited for millennia, or at least that's what scholars can surmise from the ruins of a few ancient texts found across the land. Once fully under the grasp of the mighty Korakid Empire, the race and civilization was wiped out by a series of revolts some 800 years ago, which resulted in a fragmented political landscape which still shapes the current state of affairs. So I'll give some information on the areas and the peoples of the world. Krats are a noble race of enlightened beings. The Krat came across the sea approximately 2,000 years ago. Thanks for the refined culture and superior civilization, they quickly took over barbaric cultures that originally inhabited Nania. By simply pushing them to the edges of the continent, they seem to have avoided bloodshed and brute force as often as they could, favouring swift and precise attacks. So yeah, this is just going to be talking about more of the world. If you want to place it within this world, because like we said earlier, you can play in adventures for other systems, plug them into this. Maybe you just want to take like a dungeon or a city or encounter areas from other games you have, or you've made up yourself, and run them through this. But this does give its own sort of setting and world map. Then you have roadside encounters. What could happen here? 15. A blind man stumbles while waving his walking stick in front of him. He cries constantly about the count eating his eyes. That's lovely. The Kingdom of Bavaria, covering a large portion of the continent's central region. The Kingdom of Bavaria has a strong tradition in chivalry and court life. The country is now ruled by Queen Adelius Burchett I. After the death of her husband, King Hans Burchett III, in the Battle of Gale 3 years ago, the court in Waterloo, the kingdom's capital, has suffered essentially no effects from the war due to the large distance between the current conflict zone and the city, aside from the precious Cantanorian silk garments, the finest in the world, being difficult to acquire. It's going to talk about more about the world, places of interest that you could come across when you're playing, if you're playing in this region. Because again, it does have areas, different regions, no man lands, and they're going to be quite large. You can see here's the miles. That's the chart. That's the stick. So you want to read some of this, you can. I don't want to spoil it. It's really interesting. I'll read one or two here about points of interest. So Hunter's Forest is situated near the Dominion's capital, Masses. It's a dense home to many raiders, rich in truffles, mushrooms, and valuable wood. Remains unpopulated and mostly untouched by royal decree. Local lords use it as their hunting grounds. Cantonian society, a strong sense of justice, feudal based with high inequality. Rulers have a long tradition of building public infrastructure, even though they often become abandoned. The homeless and the destitute often bundled together in large ego projects that are sprinkled across the country, such as Tavenian's Market or Yashberg's Red Garden. And this is going to talk about the church pretty much. I talked about how it was founded 324 years ago. So this is the church's beliefs and doctrine. There's only one God, the burning light of truth. The powers of darkness veil for humanity's soul. Only the church and its agents can tell right from wrong. God forgives, but only after showing true repentance. Humanity is weak and must learn God's truth, either willingly or by force. Too much is at stake. Only fire can purify the corrupt soul. There's going to be the structure of the church. You have the deacons, you have the priests, the bishops, archbishops, cardinals, speakers, and it's going to be the ecclesiastic order, inquisition, the political landscape. Again, this is stuff that's going to be more important to a GM, and there is a lot here, so if I were reading this, you'd be here for a long time. And you have your mercenary bands, and you want there the Band of the Phoenix. So I thought it was the Flaming Phoenix earlier, but it's the Band of the Phoenix. That's again very much pulled from Berserk. The author openly talks about this, and he gives you some simple chart you can roll to come up with your own cool names. So the Venerated Sisters, you roll a 1 and an 8. So if you roll a 3, that's going to be a red, and if you roll 5, that's boars, the Red Boars. The Red Boars and the Venerated Sisters. So here's some more regions. Steinberg, No Man's Land, exploring and traveling in No Man's Land. It's going to go back to the procedures on page 57. We talked about all this earlier. And it's going to be a different type of hexes you come in this area. So you can come across different settlements. What kind are they? Villages, mine colonies, stronghold, deserters camps, bandit camps, military outposts, or farms. If you come across an active battlefield, there's some encounters that can happen. So war-torn encounters as well. So this is the people are in the surrounding region who have been most affected. So maybe all the foods after being gone, they're being robbed or burnt from battles. So they're the plague victims looking for help. Wolves hunting at children. You can replace that with adult or group people. So you can try and save more people. Wilderness encounters. Civilized encounters. There'll be more happening in towns and villages. And there's some more charts again. what are the soldiers doing when you come across them. They're setting up an ambush. Maybe they're setting an ambush for you, or they're setting an ambush for deserters or bandits. And then maybe they don't come across certain bandits, they come across, you know, a demon. NPC descriptors, if you want to use them. D100 motivations, they can be used for anything as well in the game. Weekly events. So then you have functional, natural, general, and character. Functional events are stuff going to happen in fractional events. Sorry, we're going to have stuff that happens in cities and populations. Most of the time, it's going to be about the rulers. Maybe that's going to be some sort of coronation you could use. Natural world events. It has a volcano going off, so maybe get a snowstorm, tsunami if you're near the coast. General events, character events. Something from the past has come back. Maybe your character, who we said was an orphan, is not actually an orphan. Their parents gave them up, and they've come across some information about that. Dun dun dun. So locations, if you're using the map itself from within this game, that Alex has created. The area, I mean. And here's some charts you can roll up on these if you wish. And D20 adventure seeds. So again, there's lots of stuff in here we can use to create quests or have events to go on that your player characters have to interact or overcome. It's very well done, and it's only 123 pages, and that includes the cover, treasure and rewards, what the different types of people have, what does a fighter have, what's a nobleman have, what does a commoner have, what does a priest have, the rarity of them. So if you have a priest, maybe he's an archbishop, maybe what kind of rare good does he have? He's got jewels, maybe he's wearing gold, maybe he was actually serving for the demonic forces and you defeat him. There you go, you got a load of jewels and fabrics. But if anyone saw you, they're probably just going to think that you are an evil bastard. You have master crafted gear to be given them by the pluses to your stats, artifacts. I'm just going to give an example of some of them here. So we'll just read one or two of them here. So Bloodblade, a thin yet incredible sharp +2 short sword made of some unidentifiable material. This weapon has said to be an apostate's trandle of some kind. When the weapon deals damage to an opponent, it also deals 1 damage to the wielder. A sharp thorn sprouts from its hilt. You could take classic D&D magic items and put them in. Maybe strip the magic down a little bit. Don't have them like, you know, destroys 20 creatures within so far of an area, you know. If you have a D&D book that has a great magic chart system on that, how to create items, if you want to use that. Osric as well, I think you can find that for free online, which is going to be a stripped down version of AD&D. It's sort of like one of the first real OSR type games, and they were trying to figure out how to get around legal stuff because no one really knew at the time. Of Beast and Men, this is going to be some of the creatures that Alex has put in the game. So Apostles, these guys are going to be basically demons of taking the form of people. So you have your human form. Upon losing 50% of their health in the human form, the apostle will refute their true demonic form. It's taking a good bit from Berserk yet again, which is good rate, as you can see here. You can pause here if you wish and go through it. Then you have some of the more normal monsters. Buffaloes, giant rats, fire snakes, manticores, stags, wild dogs, wolves, Aquilan warrior, Astenosian warrior, bandits, commoner, inquisitor, knight, mercenary, pilgrim, soldier, or levies, regular soldier, veteran soldiers, and some monsters: Gas, Deathvine, Etten, Harpy, Risen, Trolls. And that is basically the book. Here is sort of a story about an apostle, which you can use yourself into a quest, which it kind of has it here. It's very set up in a very like 4 or 5 pages. But again, this is a very short book. It's great. It's lots of fun. You can play with this non-stop and not have any problem. If you have your own world you want to plop it in, and use the system to run it and add in all the quirks from this. It's great. As always, I will leave where to find the game, like I said at the beginning, on ttrpg and Alex's website. So if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you all again later.